Hey everybody, so today we're looking at gameplay of the good old Chinese ZTZ99A. This is currently the top of the tech tree. Um, it's kind of funny because it doesn't have any huge upgrades over the 99 Block 2 and Block 3 that come before it, but the upgrades it does have are significant enough that it does play differently. So it is in kind of this weird spot where even though it's not that much better, in terms of like raw stats, it actually is noticeably better in gameplay. So the biggest change you're going to see if you go to this from the 99 Block 2 or Block 3, the engine is noticeably better, so it has more acceleration, gets to a top speed faster, although the top speed's pretty similar. And more importantly, it also has a very good reverse gear. The reverse gear, I want to say it's like 30 to 40 kilometers an hour, something like that. But combined with a very powerful engine, it will hit that reverse gear pretty quickly and pretty consistently. It's kind of funny because like what you really need for a meta tank is like you need some kind of reverse gear. If you just on these top tier tanks, you can often get these like weird results where, and we see this M1 over here, fire a shell, don't quite kill him, but a teammate does in fact finish him off. On these like top tier tanks, it's very easy to fire shots like that where you don't quite kill the enemy or disable their ability to return fire, because a lot of them have, what is it, commander's gunner controls or hunter killer or whatever you want to call it. So even if you kill the gunner, if you don't kill the commander as well, they can still shoot you back. So you can run into a lot of scenarios where even a hit that looks fairly good doesn't disable the enemy. And that's going to be, and that's the reason why like you need the ability to reverse after shooting somebody. Just in case you get a scenario where you shoot them and they definitely still have a gun, you know, operational that can fire at you. So, like, it's not the biggest change in the world, but it does help it be a lot more meta as a vehicle. The other change is kind of the armor. It has a slightly more pronounced turret ring, although anecdotally I have never had anybody shoot it. However, the turret face is a lot better. You're almost never going to have people going through the two turret cheeks on the left and right of the gun. So, like, that's always a positive. As far as the upper plate is, you could generally consider it to be basically impenetrable. Like, very few, I don't think I've ever had anybody go through it. But this means that your frontal profile, another interesting detail this has, it doesn't really have a driver's hatch. Like, if you look at it from the front profile, the driver's hatch is on top of the hull. It's not inset in the hull like it is with so many other top-tier vehicles. So it actually doesn't have a driver's hatch to shoot at, which means on the upper plate, there's no valid target. And knock out that Abrams, he's not really paying attention. Easy kill. But it doesn't have a driver's hatch, so you eliminate that weak point completely from the front upper plate, which means that the lower plate and the breach are really the only pendable areas on this tank for most people. And kind of the turret ring, although it's an incredibly difficult target and a lot of people don't really aim for it. As far as the breach, I don't think I've ever been straight up killed through the breach. Like, usually, like, it'll disable your gun, but it will rarely just straight up eliminate you in the same way that, like, the Abrams tends to do it a lot, especially if they hit high on the breach, but never really had it happen on this tank. So the breach is a weak point, and obviously the lower plate is, like, right in front of the ammo rack. If you give somebody your lower plate, you're probably dead, but you could copy and paste that about, you know, about almost every top tier MBT. Like, if you give them your lower plate, you need to just assume they will kill you because the likelihood of that happening is quite high. As far as the gun is where, on paper, it kind of looks bad if you just side-by-side raw stats with other MBTs, but in practice, it's exactly as good as it, like, needs to be, if that makes any sense. Like, yeah, it doesn't have, like, the best reload. Yeah, it doesn't have, like, the best penetration, but the reload rate at 7.1 seconds, I believe, good enough for the vast majority of situations. And the penetration, while not amazing, is enough to hit enemy weak points. And given that most tanks in this battle rating have shells that have much higher pen, even though they do have higher pen, that pen doesn't actually allow them to go through extra weak points, essentially. So it's not really that useful. Like the Abrams top shell, M829A2, is really not that distinct from something like M900, like, on the game itself. Like when it comes down to, like, brass tacks and hard facts, like, the difference between M829A2 and M900 is very light, you're still mostly going to be aiming for the same places. And that's about where this shell falls in the range. Like, it has enough pen to do the job if you know where to aim. There we get his driver, and that's where I'm like, okay, I kind of know where his silhouette is, so we'll just pop a shell through him. Knock him out. Easy enough. But yeah, the penetration on the main shell, on the top APF SDS shell, doesn't look like anything all that amazing, but it's good enough for the vast majority of situations. So, like, even though the gun doesn't look good, it doesn't really matter. Like, you'll still get through most of your situations with absolutely no problems. That's just anecdotally. However, one thing the gun does have is some nice ammo options. Like, I actually find the ammo options are quite good. Because you have the main dart, which obviously every tank has a dart. But then you also have a guided missile. You have a high explosive shell, which isn't that useful. But you also, or no, you don't have a high explosive shell. You have a heat FS shell, which is garbage. I don't know how I missed that. I think it was just a slightly too low of a deflection. Here, I'm just trying to, there we go. And we bait it. He hits our turret right next, like he tried to go through our breach and hit the ERA on the side of the breach, and the ERA stopped it. So, yay. Which, like I said, I do actually like the armor on this tank. But you have a guided missile with a tandem warhead, and you also have a BT fuse shell, which will explode if it gets close to an aerial target. Explodes if it gets close to any target, but aerial targets in particular. So whatever your preference is for shooting down things like enemy helicopters, you know, you have a shell available. You can either use the guided missile if you prefer that kind of manual aiming, or you can use the VT if you just want to try to get close to them. So that I actually do kind of like a lot. So yeah, like, and as far as like subsystems, like the other subsystems you would theoretically want on a tank like this, it basically has everything you need. You have thermals, you have commander's thermals, they're all Gen 2s, you have a laser rangefinder, you have a laser warning receiver. Like, the only subsystem you might want you don't currently have would be something like a hard kill system, but only 2 tanks in the game have that. Well, at top tier anyway. So, you know, it's not really that noteworthy that it doesn't have it. But overall, I really do find the ZTZ99 is probably, I won't say it's the best tank, but it's a very strong meta tank, right? Like, meta tanks have to be fast enough to get in a good position. Ideally, you want a good enough reverse speed to get out of bad situations quickly. So you don't need the best reverse gear, but you need a good one. Your gun needs to be able to go through common weak points, and its reload can't be painfully slow. You need enough subsystems to be able to compete at longer ranges. Ideally, you want a laser warning receiver to also know if you're getting lased by helicopters. And this tank just has all of it. Like, there's not... And additionally, protection for a meta tank, if you and the enemy both see each other from the front, and your frontal armor is good enough that if the enemy rushes a shot, they can easily fail to kill you, that's all you're looking for, and this tank certainly has it. So, I would probably say this is... It's probably about in the middle of top tier tanks, but you can definitely have good games in it. Like, the difference between this and the best top tier tanks isn't actually that defined. Like, if the T80 BVM's damage model was reined in a bit, I actually think this would be noticeably better than the BVM. It's just right now the BVM's damage model is kind of busted, so... Yeah, like, you have to say it's better, because its damage model just doesn't work correctly, but... right now, I actually do think this is a serious contender for a pretty strong tier 10 tank, or a pretty strong 11-0 tank, top of the tech tree. And yeah, I enjoy playing it, so I hope you like it too. Hope you found this informative, and have a nice day, everybody.